Member for Laventille West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for your recognizing me to make my contribution to this debate on, well, the report on the Finance Committee, Standing Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, as has been indicated earlier, we are talking about supplementary funding for the government's program in the sum of $3.081 billion. This figure, just for the benefit of the citizens of the Republic, consists of personal expenditure in the tune of 51 million, goods and services 620 plus million, minor equipment purchases, current transfers and subsidies, current transfers to statutory boards and similar bodies, and the development program. Madam Speaker, it is to be noted when you look at these figures and the amounts that they carry or represent, some 2/3 of that amount, more than 2 billion of this, is, Madam Speaker, salaries and emoluments, payment for NIS, and that kind of thing, meaning it eventually gets into the private domain of agents, employees of the state. Minister Gonzalez, the member for Lopino Bonnia West, in his contribution made a very potent comment that it appears as though the issue is not about money, but rather it is about management. I agree with that to some extent. I go further to say the issue is really about work. It's about productivity. I hold the view, and I'm becoming more and more convinced. As we increase the expenditure for the government's program to the tune of $3.081 billion, Madam Speaker, if we would get optimal value for the money, at least those parts that go towards salaries and emoluments, the economy, the economist tells me, would immediately grow by about 20 to 25%. And therefore, I consider, as the Member of Parliament for Laventille West, I consider that productivity and work is where it's at. We will immediately solve a lot of the problems that we face and you hear our friends and others complain about if only we would ensure that the Minister of Finance gets value for money in that regard. I just want to make the point to the member for Couva South, because towards the end of his presentation, he did accuse the member for Lopino Bonnia West of misleading this House and misleading him. And he spoke about the way the money that is allocated in this supplementary allocation for the Ministry of Public Utilities, particularly through TNTech, he almost accused him of misleading us. I want to say to my friend that the bulk of the money, $68 million, is for the Ministry of Public Utilities to pay TNTech for the electricity that it accounts for in terms of lighting all the public facilities, the public grounds around the country. My friend got it wrong. The Ministry of Public Utilities is not responsible. And this is why I believe the member for Diego Martin West was quite right. Many of our colleagues over there, they probably don't read these documents. And where they read them, they have a pascha for misleading the country, even in the face of the truth and the facts. So I want to correct him publicly to say, when it comes to the maintenance and the repairs and the improvements of these facilities, that is the responsibility of the regional corporations. All that the Ministry of Public Utilities would do is to pay TNTech for the electricity consumed. So once my friend gets clear on that, I think he might be off to a better start. Madam Speaker, the member for Siparia did ask in her usual I would say, extravagant, populist way. What all you're doing with all that money? You already had you had a 50 plus or about $50 billion budget, and now you are asking for another $3 billion. That was what she said. And want to know what we are doing with that money. I would like, for the benefit of the listeners in this country, and there are some who would be easily misled by the member for Siparia and her grandiose publicity stunts, that the monies are to be spent at least in national security, head 22, which is what I'll deal with. Some of it goes to the General Administration of National Security, the 4 formations of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the Prison Service, the Fire Service, the Strategic Services Agency, the Transit Unit. They are responsible for the transport hubs around the city and the priority bus route and a couple other locations under their purview. The Forensic Science Center, the Probation Service, which is now within the purview of the Ministry of National Security, and of course the Immigration Division. And I think I did say the Fire Service as well. And the services that are going to be accounted for, paid for, services already in many cases utilized, and projections to year end would be janitorial services, salaries and cost of living allowance, overtime payments, allowances of all descriptions, from plainclothes allowances for the police, duty allowance, meal allowances for everyone, housing allowance where appropriate, proficiency allowances, protective suits allowances for the fire service in particular, maintenance of vehicles, traveling allowance, maintenance allowance. Madam Speaker, NIS payments, increments, acting allowances, electricity, telephone use, security services, vehicle maintenance, and as my friend from Couva South pointed out, gratuities, where there are contract workers. At the end of their contract periods, they are entitled to gratuity payments. And these allocations, the allocation to the ministry, the supplemental funding to the Ministry of National Security, is to ensure that we can cover all of these adequately. And again, reinforcing the point that the large majority, perhaps as far as 75%, of this increased funding treats with the personnel working in the ministry. Much less is spent on the development program. And therefore, I reiterate, in my view, it is critical that Trinidad and Tobago, for the sake of this economy, and those who operate in national security, and indeed in every government department and agency, if we strive to operate optimally, the economy would grow, we'll resolve some of the bugbears we face, and all would be a lot better off. We'll even feel better about ourselves. Because as the Quran says, to work is to pray. And even in Christianity, we observe that God, they taught us, created this world, he spent 6 days working and then rested on the 7th. Some people want to work 1 day and rest for 6. That is ungodly, I might want to add. Madam Speaker, the member for Couva South made passing commentary on the question of pension payments, and I simply want to say, and he accused the Minister of Finance of not caring for those who must benefit from that. But I want him to know it was this Minister of Finance, within recent times, who made an arrangement, which is now in vogue, for the payment of $3,000 to persons upon their departure from the office, pending the final calculation of and payment of their pensions, just to make sure in the intervening period they are not discomforted or discommoded, as happened previously for many years. You couldn't get more caring than that. And while I am at it, I, Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, the Member of Parliament for Laventille West, I want to say openly and proudly, I am absolutely proud at the work and the contribution of the Minister of Finance as he has done over the last 7 years in this country. It has not been easy, and I have watched very closely all of the budgets, all of the supplementary fundings, all of the things. I've watched in the cabinet the way he's had to manage this, and the Prime Minister is right. Rather than condemn and criticize him, you may challenge things he do. You may have a different view. You may be Mr. Economist from UE or otherwise. You may be Mr. UNC or Madam UNC, Madam SIS for all you know. But Madam Speaker, you cannot avoid and evade the fact that the Minister of Finance had stood as a stalwart in this country and steered us through the most difficult times. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm so proud to be PNM. The Prime Minister, the member for Dago Martin West, addressed this Parliament in this debate earlier, and he achieved two things. The most important one for me is that he demonstrated that we are the PNM. We have a way in which we do business. We are not the UNC. We are not like the UNC. We don't want to be like the UNC. Our record is a proud record. And the other thing he demonstrated, Madam Speaker, is that in every respect, be it intellectually, be it historically, be it morally, in every respect, we are superior to our political opponents in this House. And that's the reason why this country, as the member for Princestown correctly pointed out, has chosen us to run the affairs of this country for more than 78% of the life of this country as an independent nation state. It's because of our record. And for the last few weeks, when it was spyware, and the member for Siparia raised it, I'll come back to that, and all of the machinations and all of the things they have been doing in the national community, it is designed to give the impression that we are like them. We are all from the same, I have a metaphor for it, but they find it offensive. We are all alligators. That's what they want to sell. But we are not. We are the PNM. We're not like you. And we don't like your ways. Madam Speaker, and in all you have heard, Madam Speaker, in all you have heard all day today since we started at 1:30, the one thing you have not heard, the citizens of this country have not heard, is that any one of our colleagues accuse anybody on this side of interfering dishonestly with public money. Not one. And they can't say that with a straight face. Not in 7 years. The Minister of Finance told us in his presentation that we are now operating at 50% of our overdraft. We got up to 90-something% during these tough times when we kept the ship of state sailing on, paying every single one of the 90,000 public servants full salary on time. During those COVID years, those brutal years. And it was refreshing for me to know on behalf of the people of Laventille West that we have brought the thing down to 50% of the overdraft. When he came to office, he reminded us today, the Minister of Finance, when we came to office, he was told gleefully by the then outgoing governor of the central bank, you have 3 days to do it, 3 days to survive. And when he said that, I imagined the member for Siparia in the background. And forgive me if I imagined that, you know. because they didn't wish this country well. They are not prepared to live here and work here once the PNM is in power. They have problems with that. And I have evidence and feeling that she was somewhere in the back. The member was somewhere in the background. I'm sorry. The member was somewhere in the background because it wasn't long after that former governor appeared here as a senator in this parliament on the invitation of the member for Siparia. But that's another matter. Our debt to GDP, 72%. At one time, it was 94%. When we were struggling to keep this thing going, to pay even the salaries on our friends on the other side, to keep the school system going, even though it was online, to keep the hospitals going, challenged as they were with a parallel health system. We have every reason to commemorate and to celebrate the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spoke recently in this House, and I raised the question, having been accused by one of my friends on the other side, the member for St. Augustine it was, accused the government of delaying that report that the member for Tobago East laid in this House that was made reference to throughout this day. So I'm just passing through it. I'm not going to tarry on it. The member for St. Augustine said 5 months. Well, you know what? As you heard earlier, Madam Speaker, in 1997, they had a similar report dealing with the same issue. Today is 25 years later. We still have not seen it. And they had the gall and the temerity to criticize us, say we held it up for 5 months. That is what our friends on the other side do. 2 generations and a quarter since 1997. And as you would have heard earlier today, even the chairman of the last committee that this cabinet put in place to look at the report and, well, to investigate the situation could not get a copy of it. I am advised, Madam Speaker, that the failure of those who failed to have reported to the police, because these days they're telling me I should report an incident that I made public to the police. And there are some matters that I have reported to the police. They don't want to hear about that. About the 9 deeds that were purchased by a young man close to the then government. Anyway, Madam Speaker, the law, Section 24 of Act 27 of 1986, dealing with sexual offenses, makes it a mandatory requirement to report any knowledge of that kind of activity. And I'm sure that the lawyers and those relevant stakeholders are now looking at this matter to see whether persons were guilty of a breach of the law, having buried it to the point where there was no public record that Chairman Jones, who led that investigative team, could have even found as a backdrop to the work that they had to do now. And so, the likes of, and recently, Madam Speaker, I mentioned in this House a matter that irritated some tremendously to the point of threat of legal action. But I speak in this House. That committee was led by a certain Mr. Sabga. And among them was a national pontificator called...
Okay, so I just remind you that you promised me you won't tarry on the report. Okay, so...
Yes.
Yes, please.
But just to move on from it, the likes of Diana Mahabir Wyatt, I would like to hear her on this matter 25 years later. Chief pontificator, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, I wouldn't tarry as I told you. Some of this allocation is for the prison service to deal with issues, as I told you, about 75% for the personnel, officers of the prison service and contract workers there. They are the ones who are responsible, Madam Speaker, for upholding the security and the safety of the inmates in the prison and the officers and visitors and what have you, and protecting the society from spillovers in that prison. And I'm pleased to say that I look forward to actualizing the allocations as described by the Minister of Finance here for the prison service, because they have a critical job to do in the context of national security and have been doing it. I want to encourage the officers, as they receive improved remuneration and the allowances that this portends, that they continue, because recently, you know, they have stepped up. Imagine within recent times, they had 291 searches at the prison since the new acting commissioner came to office. I can tell you, I've been leading national security now for the past year, and we've always had reports of searches in the prison, but that activity has stepped up, 291 within recent times, yielding some 14,000 grams of marijuana, 223 cell phones, 9,159 cigarettes. And while you may think that that is a destructive element that will generate cancer, it is not only that, you know, Madam Speaker. Inside of that place, a cigarette sells for as much as $200. Recently, 2 prison officers are now under investigation, one having been seen from the allegations and from evidence available so far, with as much as 3,500 cigarettes in one package, you know. That is worth in the prison over $525,000 if they are sold at $150 each. And I might tell you, Madam Speaker, those cell phones and those SIM cards and the knives, cell phone chargers, SIM card, phone batteries, improvised weapons, USB cables, and all of these things have very devious portents inside of that institution. A lot of calls are made, and a lot from what the Commissioner of Police reports, a lot of hits are called from inside of the prison. So they are to be very encouraged. So every cent of this allocation that goes to improving the circumstances of the individual officers, meeting their expectations in accordance with the terms and conditions of their service, is very, very, very important. And I urge the prison service to continue, as the government does its part, as the Minister of Finance does his part, in terms of finding the money with an improved allocation in this so-called midterm review. It is incumbent on you, Mr. Prison Officer, to say thanks by extending yourself productively and otherwise, as you have been doing. And there's always room for improvement in the protection of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Similarly, we understand, Madam Speaker, and all my colleagues will know, that the Forensic Science Center within the Ministry of National Security is also a part of an integral part of the criminal justice system. Here's where autopsies are done and the cause of death would be revealed. And we are having a tremendous amount of attacks on women, even on children. Children, murders in the country. There was a time you get up Monday morning a few years ago, and you would hear bodies are backed up in the Forensic Science Center and they can't cope. And then the next thing you will hear is the forensic pathologist at that time, some years ago, he gone on strike because it was time to negotiate an improvement in his contract terms. So he goes on a go slow and the thing backs up and we had a problem. Those things you hear no more. And the allocations, the increased funding includes the Forensic Science Center to pay gratuities and to pay allowances to those who work in that important state agency. And I'm equally pleased to have you know, with all of that, I think Easter weekend we had 15 murders. Those are the unfortunate facts. Allowances to be paid to these people so that they will continue doing their stuff as an important part of the criminal justice system. We have employed within recent times 2 pathologists and another 2. So we have 2 in service now, and as I speak to you, Madam Speaker, another pathologist is being processed. We expect that he will get on the job very, very soon. Madam Speaker, no backlog in daily cases. And today with the COVID circumstance around us, everybody that comes to the Forensic Science Center has to first be tested for COVID. That takes an extra day or sometimes 2. Until you get the results back and you know, well, it's not COVID positive, then the pathologist is able to do his work. Very constrained circumstances. COVID changed everything. And even in that, we have improved the performance of the Forensic Science Center, because when I went there a year ago, I decided I will continue the good work done by the member for St. Anne's East. And so it has gone on, Madam Speaker. No backlog and all that. We employed an additional 2 more 3 attendants, taking us to a total of 7, just
Speaker,
to ensure that the work continues.
Standing Order 48-1 and 87-2, please.
They don't want to hear good news.
Please continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. These obtrusive friends of ours on the other side, they don't want to hear good news. They want to, I mean, as you heard earlier today. Anyway, Madam Speaker, let me continue. Madam Speaker, part of this improved allocation will deal with immigration, officers of the Immigration Service, some of whom serve at the heliport facility. That's a immigration center where they assess. And then we have the counter-trafficking unit of the Ministry of National Security that screens every single person that comes to the attention of national security for trafficking indicators. And both of these will benefit from this improved funding. Today there was a story in the paper, or yesterday it was, a long story about goings-ons at the heliport. I, as Minister of National Security, took the trouble to make contact with the counter-trafficking unit and the Special Investigation Task Force of the Police Service that works in collaboration with the counter-trafficking unit. And this morning I conducted a meeting with the ambassador, the new ambassador of Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago, His Excellency. And between the Venezuelan ambassador, the counter-trafficking unit, and the Special Investigations Task Force, not a single one, including the Venezuelan representative here, could bear support for any of the allegations made in that newspaper report. None. And in fact, the police told me, Madam Speaker, those who will benefit from these allocations and who we must make available what they are entitled to. They told me, Madam Speaker, that having heard of this, they went and interviewed some of the persons at that center in the heliport, and there was no confirmation of it.
Okay, so, member, I'll ask you to come back now to your allocations. Okay?
Thank you very much. And Madam Speaker, questions were raised about $66 million for the Strategic Services Agency by the member for Siparia. And the member for Siparia raised this question about the member for Barataria San Juan asking here about if some of this allocation is for spyware. I thought we were past that. Because I had to tell this house, and I had to say to this country outside of this house, that just to use the word spy, Madam Speaker, implied and implies that something unlawful is going on. But we have an Interception of Communications Act. And as the government indicated, the policy of this government in relation to the SSA is all that kind of capability rests with the SSA. And it is all done in accordance with the law. So when the member for Siparia raised that question today, I said how disingenuous the member is. And shameless too. Shameless. Because the member knows the facts and continue to mouth it very wickedly and immaturely and recklessly, Madam Speaker, casting aspersions on those people who we pay in this country to protect us from terrorists and murderers and waylayers and rapists and human traffickers. But as I said, there are some people who like good and some people who don't want nothing good. So, Madam Speaker, I give my friends the assurance on the other side. We comply with the law, and I've invited the member for Siparia who raised this matter. If you do not want to accept what I say, put on your self-issued silk and go to the Hall of Justice and demonstrate that somebody's rights are being infringed. Madam Speaker, so these allocations are to take care of outstanding NIS payments and monies due and owing to personnel, and as I indicated, to acquire 3 standby generators and a small part of it to upgrade the CCTV camera system at Piaco. And as I say so, the member for Siparia bold-facedly today raised the question of about CCTV cameras. One of the first things the member for Siparia did when she came to office is to disable all of the facial recognition cameras and the system at Piaco Airport. In addition to that, remove every camera from around the Prime Minister's house or residence. Ask the head of the security agencies that time if the blimp could see through galvanized and wall, all sounding like somebody who have something to hide. And went on to do worse. So let me put it and make it abundantly clear. The SSA is an establishment set up under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and they comply with those laws. And I ask my friends on the other side to stop rumor mongering. I heard someone today raise the question of gender-based violence and what is happening. And I just want to say, we have gender-based violence, the child protection unit and the gender-based violence units across the police service. They actually have locations at the Sinclair Police Station, the Maloney Police Station, the Besor Street Police Station, the Sangre Grande Police Station, the Carenage Police Station, Chaguanas, Gasparillo, Labre.
I rise on 48.1. I fail to see the line item that the direction in which he's going about gender-based violence, wherever.
Member, I'm sure you've been here for most of the debate, and my recollection is the member for Princess Town raised those issues, and the member said, he prefaced his statement in saying he heard somebody mention, so it's in direct response to that. I'm sure you were here at that time, because you've been here most of the day. I have to give you that. I have to give you that credit. You've been here most of the day.
Yes, yes. I see, Madam Speaker. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, these units are up and functional and doing what they must in Trinidad and Tobago. They have easily accessible on our website at National Security and on the police website all of the telephone numbers that a victim or a person can call to get their support 24 hours per day. The National Domestic Violence Hotline 800-SAVE or 800-7283, that is operational all of the time. This morning, we tested it. I called the minister responsible and raised the issue, and the minister continues to monitor this to ensure that the people of Trinidad and Tobago who need the support of those who we improve their circumstances with this increased allocation today, Madam Speaker. And when we were in committee, and this is a debate on the report of the committee, I heard my friend who jumps up like a wooden toy.
Member, let's limit personal reflections, all right, that may appear to be insulting. All right, please.
My friend from Naparima who likes to jump up at the drop of a hat. My friend told us in committee, and it's recorded in Hansard, that we are about to spend all these millions on the SSA and would not spend equally on the cadet force. So I want, before I close, to let my friend from Naparima understand that the cadet force is one youth program in the Ministry of National Security. One. And it got an allocation of some $4 million for this fiscal year. And that's because for the last 2 years, the COVID experience put pay to all of their activity, most of which is outdoors and in groups. And it is only within recent times, and including as late as Saturday, I attended a function of the cadet force. I attended the opening of their first camp about 5 weeks ago in San Fernando to train non-commissioned officers, NCOs, and NCO cadres, they call it, in preparation for promotion. And another one is expected to start in the month of July, Madam Speaker. And that's only one program. So it is just facetious to say you're spending money on the SSA as though that is not necessary. Every bit of the expenditure in national security is necessary. And you comparing it with the cadet force. I mean, how banal. And I want to say to my friend in passing that we have dedicated a whole Ministry of Youth Development and National Service to the youth. And even in national security, when we recruit 238 officers for the prison service, 540-something officers for the defense force, as we did in the last year, for the fire service, for the police service, it is young people we recruit. They must be between the ages of 18 and 25 years. So all of the people who we recruit and train and put to work in the service of this country, they are as well young people. And the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, who we are funding today as well, they carry on some swimming pool training programs for young people in Maloney, in Coconut Drive in Mova, and Sogrin Trace in my constituency. And it's not only about swimming, it is about discipline, it is about conducting oneself in a certain way, building self-esteem, teaching how to operate and to live in harmony with each other. In some cases, the officers become almost like parents to these children. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to say that in passing so that my friend from Naparima would better understand. So I look forward to the realization of this. And I'm very pleased that the Ministry of National Security, having made the request we did, are to benefit from this supplemental funding, and I give the national community the assurance that I will continue as the Minister of National Security to provide these resources. Go to the cabinet, argue for them where we have to. Provide these resources to all of the agencies of national security. And we're not just talking it today with this additional allocation, we are demonstrating that, and this is in addition to what we had already done. Making good our obligations to the personnel and doing the business so that they could do the work that they are sworn and paid to do. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to ask my friends on the other side, as my colleague from Lopino Bonnier West did, encourage them to be a lot more patriotic in their orientation, to take a more sanguine view on the affairs of the country, and to be bold enough from sometime to admit, as everyone else in the country knows, that this country is in safer and better hands with this government and with the PNM. Acknowledge that, support these measures, and we will use these monies without tampering with public funds, as has been the case in the past, some of which keeps the police very busy now. As for my friend, the member for Oropouche, my friend from Lopino Bonnier West did correctly ask him, and I want to conclude by asking him, not to take every opportunity to play around with the serious business of policing and law and order in this country, and not to be so curious and jiggery. The police have a job to do. I heard him recently call what we do and what we are allocating these resources for witch hunting. And I want to conclude by saying, when the police are on the prowl and they have their work to do, they don't see yellow or red. They see crime, criminal conduct. And if they see a crime and the perpetrator happens to be a politician, it ought to make no difference. So join us in supporting them, Madam Speaker, so that they can do their work in the protection and the safety of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Member for Barataria, stand on.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for acknowledging me to join in this most important debate where the government is seeking a supplemental appropriation of in excess of $3.3 billion, from the last appropriation for financial year 2022. And the exercise that we engage here, Madam Speaker, for those who are listening, is that the government has already appropriated over $50 billion for expenditure for goods and services developmental programs in Trinidad and Tobago. When we last met as a financial committee last year, when we approved the budget, and now they have found that that is not enough, so they have come to the Parliament by law to approve a supplemental appropriation of over $3 billion. And the minister indicated that over $2 billion would be spent in recurrent expenditure. And Madam Speaker, I want to address one of the matters that the Minister of Finance put very early on the record, and that has to deal with the overdraft. And there's this false narrative that the government continuously repeats that we have left, the People's Partnership government has left the Treasury with 3 days' worth of money, and they continue to repeat this, thinking that persons will believe the untruth. But Madam Speaker, what the Minister failed to tell us is that there is the Auditor General's report, and the Auditor General report would have indicated that the Exchequer account, which is the account that we get the overdraft from, has been in overdraft since fiscal 2003. So the minister makes it out to be that the Exchequer was only in overdraft for the period 2010 to 2015. That is absolutely false. The Auditor General is confirming that the Exchequer has been in overdraft since 2003. And what the minister fails to tell the population and the parliament is that in 2015, the account was overdrawn by $33 billion. Madam Speaker, as at 2021, the exchequer account is overdrawn by $42 billion. $42 billion. So this government in the last 7 years would have taken out $9 billion out of the overdraft, Madam Speaker. And when the minister says that the overdraft was at a particular ceiling, the overdraft is calculated according to the Central Bank Act Section 46(2) in particular. Madam Speaker, when the People's Partnership were in government, the overdraft limit would have been 15%. Do you know that this government in the year 2017 increased the ceiling because they overdrawn so much of the exchequer that they had to increase the ceiling from 15% to 20%? And that is the truth of the matter, because it is in the law that this same Minister of Finance was the one to increase the ceiling on the overdraft so that they could take more money. And then blame our government that we only left the country with 3 days worth of money. Madam Speaker, that is absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. And I think I had to put that on the record because the minister has to be truthful when he reports to the population. They maxed out the overdraft, so they had to come with law to increase the overdraft on the exchequer account. That is what they had to do. Now, Madam Speaker, there are several points.
Order 48.6, where you said the minister has to be truthful. The minister is always truthful.
Okay, please continue.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know it's very late, and I'll just leave it right there. Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security would have raised several issues with respect to the prisons, forensic, the SSA, and some youth programs. And throughout my presentation, Madam Speaker, I intend to deal with most of these matters. So the first matter I would like to deal with is the SSA. And the SSA was created, Madam Speaker, for intelligence gathering. After the 1990 coup, we realized, based on the recommendations, that there have been a siloing of intelligence. It was meant to really amalgamate the intelligence so that we will have a more robust national security apparatus, we would have increased coordination with respect to the national security agencies and various divisions. So the SSA was created in terms of the intelligence gathering aspect. And Madam Speaker, we have seen time and time again that the SSA will be allocated hundreds of millions of dollars. So for example, in this financial year that we're dealing with, the SSA would have been allocated $287 million originally for fiscal 2022. The minister now comes to tell the parliament that they need an additional $66 million. And to justify this, Madam Speaker, when you look at page 16 of the agenda, one line they're using to justify an increase of $66 million. And it is this. It is saying that it is needed to enable the Strategic Services Agency to meet its operational expenses. So the SSA has a very important function, and that deals with the management and the operation of the CCTV cameras in Trinidad and Tobago, and also they have a very important function under the Interception of Communications Act. So I'll deal with the CCTV cameras first, Madam Speaker. When dealing with this, I would like to use some of the facts that were presented in previous times by various ministers, for example, and statements made in the Parliament. So, Madam Speaker, on the 20th of September 2020, Minister Young said there was an $80 million agreement signed with the U.S. firm Johnson Controls. In February 2021, the then Commissioner of Police, Captain Griffith, revealed that approximately 800 CCTV cameras are not working. On the 5th of February 2021, Minister Young said that they are working to fix the cameras as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, we heard in the Standing Finance Committee just on Friday gone that the minister would have reported that the same amount that were not working has not changed. So what that meant was that no cameras were in fact repaired. So right now, 40% of the CCTV coverage in Trinidad and Tobago, CCTV camera coverage, is non-functional. So, Madam Speaker, one has to wonder, what is the SSA doing with this allocation every single year of hundreds of millions of dollars? What are they doing? Because if you cannot get the CCTV cameras working and the SSA, it now falls under the remit of the SSA, what functionality, what systems are being placed in order to monitor, increase the coverage of these CCTV cameras? We heard a feeble excuse from the Minister of National Security, where the body of our young daughter, Andrea Barrett, was found, saying that they don't have the technology to install cameras in that particular location.
On Standing Order 55-1B, this is the fourth speaker to refer to that.
Okay. All right, so, member, it's late, and, I'm going to start soon to invoke the rule of tedious repetition. So I'll ask you to just quickly tie up that point and move on to a fresh point.
Guided.
Please.
I'm guided, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the point is that this Minister of National Security is an absolute failure when it comes to CCTV cameras in this country. Absolute failure.
Order 55-1B, this is the third speaker to pinpoint it that way.
Please continue. As I said, just wrap up that point quickly about the CCTV cameras, and let's go on to something fresh. We've been here almost 9 hours. Okay,
Thank you very
so
much.
A lot of ground has been traversed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I thank the member for San Fernando West for saying that I have...
Member, one, the requirement is that we keep our masks on unless we're in dire straits, okay? Particularly if you're going to speak and project your voice. Continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for San Fernando West for pointing out to me that I'm the third person to say that Laventil West is an absolute failure. Madam Speaker, when I look at the other aspect of the SSA that deals with the interception of communications,
I just 48 I want the member to know I'm a man.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know that is an irrelevant consideration. Madam Speaker, so I want to deal with the aspect of the Interception of Communications Act.
So members, I would like to hear the contribution coming from the member Barrett Arisanwan. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, as I was saying, I want to deal with the other aspect of the SSA which dealt with the interception, something that was not traversed in this particular debate. And Madam Speaker, it is no secret that the SSA would conduct interceptions. There's an Interception of Communications Act which guides the manner in which intercepts ought to take place in Trinidad and Tobago.
Interception of Communication Act have to do with the mid-year review and supplementation of income.
Okay. All right. So, member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. I know it's late, and maybe some of us, maybe our nerves are a little rattled, and exercise helps us maintain tolerance. Okay? So that little outburst, if you could just apologize for that little outburst, and if the tolerance level is dipping low, a little exercise and you can come back, please.
Apologize, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Yes, so member for Baratari Sanwan. The interception point was raised to answer a point about spying. As I've said before, not everything that is tangential to a debate is allowable to be developed. Okay? So I think enough has been said about CCTV cameras, enough has been said about spying and what is not spying. Please, at this time, deal with something else.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you see, the thing with the SSA is that it's a function, as the primary function is that of intelligence gathering. And Madam Speaker, just permit me 1 minute to just put this on the record. It is that the SSA is being given $66 million in additional supplementation for operations within the SSA. And when you look
I
at
rise on Standing Order 55-1B, Madam Speaker.
Yeah. Even for yourself, and I have to uphold the objection raised by the member for San Fernando West. I think that's the point you entered the debate on, all right? That this is additional to the initial funding for the operation. So please, let's get on to something else at this stage.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Because you see, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent. And in this Parliament, we have not received annual reports for the SSA for the period 2019, 2020,
Speaker,
2021,
Order
2022.
55-1B and 48-1.
So again, this is the last time I'm going to guide you with respect to 55-1B. If not, I will have to invoke my powers. I'm sure there are other points that you can develop at this stage.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I'll move on to the Office of the Attorney General, something that was not dealt with whatsoever in this debate as yet.
I don't need to be reminded about what has been dealt with this debate. If it's anybody who's been sitting down through all of this, it's the chair. Please continue.
It's for the appreciation of my colleagues opposite, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I'll start off with the first line item that deals with contract employment, where the Office of the Attorney General is asking for an increase in terms of contract employment in the sum of $17.2 million. And the Attorney General did tell us that there were 848 of the contract positions that were in fact filled. And this particular line item will deal with encouraging or recruiting more contract officers for the various divisions under the Office of the Attorney General. And in the particular Standing Finance Committee, Madam Speaker, I would have asked the Attorney General whether or not there have been a shortage in manpower at the Solicitor General's office and the Chief State Solicitor's Department. And the reason that I have asked this particular question, Madam Speaker, it is this. It is because I'm advised that there are various problems at the Solicitor General and the Chief State Solicitor's Department. And if you look at the Joint Select Committee's report on finance and legal affairs into the inquiry of the ease of doing business, you would see when the Solicitor General appeared before that particular committee, you would have seen, Madam Speaker, that the Solicitor General, Ms. Hernandez, was complaining of the conditions in that particular department, saying that they don't have enough attorneys and that the workload is getting increasingly heavy. Even a Newsday article dated the 16th of January 2021, the member for Port of Spain South was a member of that JSC, and I will quote what he would have said in the particular committee's meeting. He said, the member for Port of Spain South,
48-1.
What is that? What are you talking about?
Okay, so, member, I'm going to give you a little leeway. I think you were talking under contract employment, and this is an allocation for contract employment. So I'm giving you a little leeway to see where you're going. All right, let's hear.
Appreciate it. And what the member for Port of Spain South was saying is this. He said every 6 months we call over 70 people to the bar. In other words, it is not as if there's a dearth of attorneys, and it must be a question of getting adequate staffing. He said such a staff shortage poses a real risk to the state to meet strict deadlines imposed by law.
Member. Member for Laventille West. Again, I think maybe you really need to take a little exercise. Member, I think you're under contract employment. And as I am being trained to understand the point with respect to there not being sufficient staff and there being a vote, an increased allocation for contract employment. Okay? So, as I say, if in 1 minute you don't show me the connection, I'll ask you to move on to something else.
So, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General said that this vote for contract employment will hire additional attorneys for divisions under his ministry, such as the Solicitor General's office and the Chief State Solicitor's office, and he even guided me to the Gazette. I could quote from page 124 of the report of the Standing Finance Committee, when the Attorney General said that he quoted from the Gazette of the 9th of September 2020, saying that those two offices are under his remit and this particular vote will be applicable to those particular units and division. So that is the point, Madam Speaker. It is that they don't have enough staff at at those two divisions, and therefore one has to wonder whether or not this vote for contract employment will be sufficient in order for persons to properly protect the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because, Madam Speaker, I'll tell you something. What I'll tell you is that recently there was a judgment of the High Court, CV 2014-02037, Ashton Ford, Andrea Chambers Wilson, Elvin Edwards, and the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, where in that particular judgment, the High Court, a judge of the High Court.
I rise on the sub judice rule. I believe that matter is under appeal. If the honourable member could confirm.
That matter is still live?
Madam, I have a written judgment in my hand.
Apologize. Under the sub judice principle, I'm not talking about the written judgment. I'm talking about the appeal of the judgment in relation to the judgment. Yeah.
So, member for member for San Fernando West, are you saying that there's a live appeal or not?
Madam Speaker, I recall that this matter is a matter that is under appeal, and I'm...
Okay, so if it is that you are saying it's sub judice, then you stand by what you see.
Madam Speaker, I have raised the sub judice principle, and I'm asking the honourable member, out of an abundance of caution, as I'm entitled to, the sub judice rule is a protection of principle, and therefore I am asking under that standing order, Madam Speaker, because the member is standing by his own words. I'll be...
All right. So you can't say yes or no that it falls under the rule. All right? And all I say to the member for Barataria San Juan, if it is, he has to know whether or not. He says it's not, there are consequences. Okay?
I think I will say this, that I am unaware of what San Fernando West is raising. In my hand, I have a copy of the judgment dated 18th March 2020 before the Honorable Mr. Justice
Madam Speaker,
Robin Mohammed.
48.1. A judgment has absolutely nothing to do with contract employment in the Attorney General's office. 48.1.
All right. So, as I say, whether or not you know what the former Attorney General is talking about, member for San Fernando West, you have a responsibility to know whether the matter is under appeal or not. So I take it, if you're going ahead with it, you accept the responsibilities for if it falls under the subjudicial rule. All right?
Unless...
And therefore, you are free to proceed, but understand that you stand by the consequences that will follow.
Madam Speaker, and the Attorney...
Standing Order 48.1 as raised by my colleague there on this issue.
Member, please proceed. Let me see where you're going with this.
Thank you very much. And Madam Speaker, I wouldn't dwell too long.
Wanted to raise something, Member for Cooper?
I would just say, Madam Speaker, Standing Order 49.2. My colleague from Sama Barataria should be allowed to proceed.
I think you had a lapse. We long past that. Please go on, Member Barataria.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the simple point is that what the judge pointed out in his written judgment is that no witness statements were filed on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General.
So let's get on with it.
Sure.
Okay, I rule now on Standing Order 48.1. All right?
You know, Madam Speaker, this is really oppressive that what is happening in this parliament, especially with the standing orders that are being raised
One
on
minute.
the other side.
1 minute. Member. Member for Barataria San Juan. Member for Barataria San Juan. I'm speaking to you. Please give me the respect at least looking up. When I rule, I rule. Okay, I want you to apologize for what you just said, or you suffer the consequences of not apologizing. All of us are most probably very tired in here today.
Madam Speaker, I apologize and allow me to...
Member, that is not an apology. Put down your papers, watch me, and apologize.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I would like to end my contribution.
Thank you very much. Minister of Finance. Member for Lavender, Member, either you take your seat, either you take your seat or leave. I am going to call to the attention of the House your behavior. And thank you. Let's proceed. Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam. Madam Speaker, there is very little to respond to, and I do not say that whimsically. I have...
Mr. Finance. Member for Barataria San Juan. Member for Barataria San Juan. I'm now going to call to the attention of the House the behavior of the member for Barataria San Juan, which I consider to amount to gross disorder. And therefore, in these circumstances, I bring that to the attention to the members of the House, and I now call upon a member in accordance with Standing Order 55-7.
Madam Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 55-7, which I quote, says that if on any occasion the Speaker considers that her powers under the previous provision of this standing order are inadequate, the Speaker may name such a member under this standing order by mentioning the name of the member concerned. In the circumstances, the procedure prescribed in the next succeeding paragraph shall be followed. Having mentioned the name of the member, Madam Speaker, I rise to say, Mr. Saddam Hussein, the member, I move the motion that Mr. Saddam Hussein, the member for Barataria San Juan, be suspended from the service of this House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, I shall now put the question to the House that the member for Barataria San Juan, Mr. Saddam Hussein, be suspended from the service of the House. In the circumstances, all in favor? Aye. Any against? No. Well,
it says, Madam Speaker, that having put the question as you have just, Madam Speaker, Standing Order 55-7D says, this question must be resolved without amendment, adjournment. No, sorry, Madam Speaker.
Debate.
Standing Order 55-7D says this question must be resolved without amendment, adjournment, or debate.
You could call for division.
I call for division.
Clerk. Clerk, the function begin.
Mr. Imbert? Mr. Young? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Hines? Mr. Dayal Singh? Mr. Al-Rawi? Ms. Beckles?
Yes.
Mrs. Webster Roy?
Yes.
Ms. Cujo?
Aye.
Dr. Gatsby Dolly?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. McClushy? Mr. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Dino Brega?
Aye.
Mr. Leons?
Yes.
Mr. Manning?
Aye.
Mrs. Morris Julian?
Aye.
Mr. Scotland?
Aye.
Mr. Richards? Mr. Monroe?
Aye.
Mrs. Robinson Regis?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Mr. Charles?
Oh.
Miss Amin?
Definitely no.
Mr. Indar Singh?
No.
Mr. Padarat?
No.
Dr. Munilal? Mr. Hussain?
No.
Mr. Pare?
No.
Miss Benjamin?
No.
Mr. Rambali?
No.
Dr. Bodo?
No.
Mr. Ram?
No.
Dr. Ragbir?
No.
Miss Mohit?
No.
Mr. Tanku?
Absolutely not.
Miss Haynes?
No.
Mr. Ratiram?
No.
Dr. Sicharan?
No.
Dr. Rowley? Madam Speaker, the results of the division are 19 members voted for, 17 members voted against. There were 0 abstentions.
Honorable members, on a division with 19 members voting for, 17 members voting against, and no abstentions, the motion is carried. The member for Barataria Sanwan, Mr. Saddam Hussein, is hereby suspended from this House for 7 days. Minister of Finance. And any member who finds this totally acceptable is free to leave. The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I was indicating before we had the little interruption there, having listened very carefully to members opposite, there isn't much to respond to. And I mean that seriously. The leader of the opposition who responded to me obviously had come with a prepared speech, not having a clue as to what I would say. And as a result, many of the statements made by the leader of the opposition made absolutely no sense. What struck me in particular, when that honorable member was reading from her prepared speech, written by God knows who, was her statements regarding the payment of principal on the public debt. There was such a classic misunderstanding on the part of that member of the fact that if payments are made towards principal on debt, then we are paying down the debt and the public debt will be further reduced. And therefore, if in this supplementation, as is the fact, we are making substantial payments, appropriations for substantial payments of principal, this will only further reduce the public debt and improve our debt to GDP ratio and improve our credit rating. And really, Madam Speaker, I've said it before, there's such a lack of intellectual content in the presentations from the other side. It's really tragic, indeed quite pathetic. And I hope for the day that we can have a proper debate in this House about the proper utilization of taxpayers' funds for the benefit and service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Instead of all this foolishness. We are all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We should be glad that things are looking up, as the Prime Minister indicated. After 6 hard years, Madam Speaker, where we had to reduce expenditure by 20%, from 60 billion to 50 billion. Those were rough years, Madam Speaker. As I indicated earlier, it was very difficult to operate and run this country with the government's overdraft to the central bank closing up on 100%. There have been many occasions over the last 6 years where we've had to close off the treasury and cease the writing of government checks just to make sure that we did not cross the overdraft limit and would not be able to pay mandatory payments. And the Prime Minister has indicated some of the payments that are made on a monthly basis, and I would just like to repeat some of them. The payments that are most important are the payments that go to the most vulnerable in society. As we indicated here today, every single month, the government of Trinidad and Tobago makes payments in excess of $400 million for social grants, whether it is senior citizens pension, whether it is a disability grant, whether it is public assistance, or any of the several social grants that are made by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services every single month, over $400 million per month, Madam Speaker. You're talking about $5 billion a year in social grants. And it has been difficult over the last 6 years to continue to make these payments in full and on time, but we have done it. We have done it. And therefore, when I listened to what members opposite had to say, their contributions were wholly irrelevant. There was no substance. They had nothing to do with the matter that we are about. I heard members complaining that we are giving ministries funding to deal with long outstanding arrears to MTS. As I said, I often wonder how MTS makes out, because it is difficult for them when they are not paid by ministries and statutory authorities and state enterprises. And therefore, we now have an opportunity in this supplementary appropriation to deal with these issues, to give MTS the arrears that it is owed, to deal with long outstanding problems of telephone bills in ministries which run into the millions of dollars. I remember just the other day, the Minister of Education was asking me for urgent assistance to deal with the telephone bills that have accumulated in the Ministry of Education and the various agencies that are funded by the Ministry of Education. So therefore, I do not understand when we have some funds, we've decided to deal with these issues, to pay off electricity bills, bills to WASA, bills to TSTT, bills to the many small entities that provide janitorial services and security services to all the ministries throughout Trinidad and Tobago. I would expect people will be happy about this. But yet we heard members opposite criticizing the government and complaining about the fact that we are making appropriations to deal with long outstanding bills to suppliers, to contractors, to utility companies and so on. It makes absolutely no sense. No sense whatsoever. And the other thing that makes no sense, members opposite have been in government. They know that the public sector wage bill, when you take into account all the 100,000 odd employees in the public sector, in the regional health authorities, in the mainstream public service, in the water and sewage authority, and so on. You're talking about close to 100,000 persons whose salaries and wages every month, when you add it all up, when you add up the people in the Tobago House of Assembly, the employees of the THA and so on, when you add it all up, you're looking at close to $2 billion. Members opposite are well aware of that. Take that $2 billion and you add in the 400+ million for social grants. You're looking at $2.5 billion before you even start the month, Madam Speaker. And these payments have to be made. And it is testimony to the resilience of this PNM government that, notwithstanding our problems, we have held body and soul together, if I can paraphrase the Honorable Prime Minister, for the last 6 years under very, very difficult circumstances. So I understand that members opposite were shocked to hear what I had to say today. They had no idea. And one of the reasons why they have no idea is they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, as they say. They're listening to themselves. And they're also listening to all of those uninformed commentators throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And we live in a society where people write and talk absolute nonsense. I heard today a former disgruntled, discredited politician declaring that whatever additional revenues the government may be getting from oil and gas, we must not use it to give a wage increase to public servants. Declaring that and saying it would be criminal of the government if we were to decide to take some of the additional revenues that we are getting and settle collective agreements that have been in abeyance for so long. And on the flip side, you have a Labour leader saying the exact opposite, that, we should stop our infrastructure development projects, we should stop our road programs, we should stop building things. We should take the money, close down the development program, and take that money and give persons employed in the public sector a wage increase. This is what we have to listen to, Madam Speaker, as a government. It's very, very difficult. And then you have persons from the university who should know better, and I do believe they know better, trying to discredit the good news before it even comes. They know that because of the increased prices in oil and gas and the rebound in the economy, and I want to stress, there has been a remarkable recovery in the economy. And that didn't happen by accident. When we took the decision to make amendments to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund legislation to allow us to dip into what is our rainy day fund, we took that decision when the pandemic hit us. We had no choice. We were lucky, we were fortunate as a country that we had a sovereign wealth fund. There are other countries in the Caribbean had no such thing. I remember hearing about the situation in St. Lucia when the pandemic hit them and borders were closed and aircraft stopped flying, and these are the tourism-dependent economies. I remember hearing about St. Lucia, and I have no doubt there was a change of government in that country that this may have contributed in some way to that public servants had to take a 50% cut in salary. 50% cut. That didn't happen in Trinidad and Tobago. We were able to judiciously utilize our sovereign wealth fund. We were able to engage in prudent, moderate borrowing so that we could continue the economic momentum. And our GDP dropped as low as $140 billion when the pandemic took hold of us, Madam Speaker, in 2020. It dropped to $140 billion. It is now 180. It has increased by $40 billion in GDP over the last 2 years. That is a remarkable recovery. And when one looks at the figures, and I challenge any one of these commentators, uninformed commentators, go and check the CSO data. When you look at the data, you will see that the Trinidad and Tobago's GDP at this time is higher than the pre-pandemic levels. So we have not only recovered beyond the problems that we faced in the pandemic, we have recovered beyond the pre-pandemic levels. So it's not a case that we went so low that we must go back up. We have not only gone back up, we have gone back up and surpassed where we were before. And with these blessings that we are being given, and as the Prime Minister put it, imagine members of Parliament complaining about blessings to Trinidad and Tobago in terms of increased revenue. Imagine that. God has smiled on us and they vex, Madam Speaker. And the whole point, the Prime Minister made a point, and I hadn't thought about it before, that sometimes you think the only connection that they have to Trinidad and Tobago is that they hold a Trinidad and Tobago passport. That's about it. But they have no commitment to this country. They're not interested. They're not interested in the growth and development of this country and the welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So today we were treated to a sorry spectacle. A sorry spectacle. Irrelevance, irrationality, untruths. Imagine complaining that the government is making allocations to reduce the public debt. That's a bad thing. That is what I was hearing here today. That kind of foolishness. And Madam Speaker, I don't pay much attention to the member for Oropouche East. I don't pay much attention. Because his approach, that honourable member's approach to the Parliament is to bus mark. Whenever that honourable member comes to talk, he had a bus mark. He has some scandal he wants a bus. There's no content in what he says. But I take offence sometimes to what he says. And I took offence today. I have been a member of Parliament for 30 years. I don't have a security guard that follows me around. I drive myself to the supermarket or the gas station. I don't have an escort. I can go anywhere in my constituency on my own without any problems. And therefore I take great offense to honorable members like the member for Orpooch East, who when he was Minister of Housing, he wasn't Minister of National Security. He had a bodyguard following him around, shadowing him everywhere he went. And I remember he being asked why. He said the reason is he's a member of the National Security Council. And Madam Speaker, I'm a member of the National Security Council. No big thing. That doesn't mean that I am entitled to have armed men guarding me everywhere I go. And it upsets me that the members opposite are guilty of the most, I can't use unparliamentary language. I was going to say heinous. The members opposite are guilty of the most horrible things. Everything that they accuse us of, they are in fact guilty of. I remember that honorable member, 2 Range Rovers and a Mercedes-Benz at his personal disposal when he was Minister of Housing. And I remember they asking him why it is you caused the Ministry of Housing to purchase a Range Rover for you to drive around in. And he gave a flippant answer, oh, it's a nice car. I drive my own car to the Ministry of Finance every day. I pay for it with my own money, Madam Speaker. I don't drive a government vehicle. So I take deep offense at this nonsense, and I will have none of it. And I thought it was about time to say that. I am not a stush minister. I'm not a coward minister. I don't need any security and bodyguard to follow me around. I can go wherever because I am a member of the People's National Movement. So let us come back now to the matter at hand. I wish to repeat the good news so that those who are interested would listen and hear. Let me repeat the good news that I said today. And it's been a long time that we have been able to indicate some good news. I am confirming that we have stabilized the public debt of Trinidad and Tobago, and that our debt is incrementally going down. I am confirming that the budget deficit for 2022 will be significantly less than projected at budget time. I'm confirming the astonishing fact that whereas in 2021, it was indicated that our debt to GDP ratio was 87%, causing all of these uninformed communicators. There's one character that works for a company that's associated with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or something. One character that actually did an interview saying that the next country in the Caribbean that will default on its debt is Trinidad and Tobago. Utter rubbish. And it is astonishing that we can drop from 87% in 2021 to 72% in 2022. I consider that remarkable and gives us the kind of fiscal space that we need. So, Madam Speaker, with that kind of fiscal space, we can invest in the productive sector. Because I've heard that old talk as well. What we're going to do with the money? We are going to use the money after we deal with the vulnerable, after we deal with the poor, after we deal with the working people, after we deal with the middle class, after we deal with all of the issues we have in this country, or at the same time, we are going to invest in projects, we're going to invest in the productive sector to get this economy going again. We're going to use that money to drive the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to use that money to create jobs. We're going to use that money for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that this House adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the second session, 2021-2022, 12th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation of appropriation for fiscal year 2022. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Bills second reading.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021, be now read a second time. As is customary, Madam Speaker, all of the issues associated with the bill before us, the Act to supplement the appropriation of the sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021. All of those issues have been dealt with at the Standing Finance Committee, in the report of the Standing Finance Committee, and in the debate today. Suffice it to say that we are seeking parliamentary approval to supplement the original appropriation in the sum of approximately $3.08 billion. This is all important appropriations dealing with long outstanding arrears, dealing with contract employment, dealing with gratuities, and dealing with inescapable expenses required by ministries and departments. I don't think I have to say anything more, because we've gone through a lengthy debate dealing with the various heads of expenditure which are to be increased. I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021, be now read a second time. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021.
Minister of Finance, you move to the last part of the procedure.
Are you sure we have it right, Madam Speaker?
Yes. That's why I've tried to guide you.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 87.2, I now beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021, be forthwith read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021, be forthwith read a third time and passed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Supplement the Appropriation of the Sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2022 Act 2021.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House to now adjourn to Monday, the 23rd day of May 2022 at 10 a.m. At that time, we will continue debate on the local government reform report from the Joint Select Committee. That's it.
Remind me of the time?
10 a.m. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Monday, the 23rd day of May, 2022 at 10 a.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Monday, the 23rd day of May, 2022 at 10 a.m.